Today's story is not just a lesson, it is a warning. Science tells us that decisions made in moments of anger are far more likely to be wrong than decisions made in calm situations. When emotions take control, the logical part of the brain steps aside, reason becomes quiet, and impulse takes the lead. That is why the philosopher Aristotle once said that anyone can become angry, but to be angry at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right amount, that is true skill? The real question is, how many of us have truly mastered that skill? Most people believe strength comes from power, authority, or dominance. But true strength comes from something far more difficult, the ability to control one's own emotions. And this story will show you exactly why. Once upon a time, there was a powerful king. He was intelligent, educated, and respected across neighboring lands. His kingdom was strong, his armies loyal, and his wealth vast. Yet despite all this power, the king had one dangerous weakness. He lost his temper quickly, very quickly. Even the smallest inconvenience could ignite his anger, and once angry, he made decisions driven entirely by emotion. Many times, innocent people suffered harsh punishments for minor mistakes. Servants trembled in his presence. Advisors spoke carefully, fearing that a single wrong word could cost them their position or worse. The king ruled a powerful kingdom, yet he could not rule his own emotions. One day, a special guest arrived at the palace. It was the king's childhood teacher. Years ago, this man had not only taught the king how to read and write, but also how to think, how to observe life, and how to understand human nature. The king welcomed him with great respect and invited him to stay for dinner. That evening, they sat together, sharing food and memories from the past. The king laughed, remembering his younger days, and for a moment he seemed calm and content. Then suddenly, a fly fell into the king's soup. In an instant, his mood changed. He slammed his hand on the table and shouted in rage, demanding to know how such carelessness was possible. His voice echoed through the hall. The servant responsible froze in fear and quickly replied that there had been no fly when the soup was served, but the king's anger did not slow down. His face burned with irritation. At that moment, the childhood teacher spoke gently and calmly. He asked the king to think for a moment. He explained that the servant could not have placed the fly in the soup. It must have fallen in later. The king snapped back, saying that the teacher did not understand how small things like this ruined his mood. The teacher smiled softly and said something that changed everything. He said that the fly did not destroy the king's peace. The king's reaction did. A person who cannot rule over his own emotions, he said, can never truly rule over anything else. The king fell silent. For the first time, he did not respond with anger. The words cut deep because they were true. The teacher continued, explaining that decisions made in anger or extreme joy are often wrong. Before making any decision, a person must pause. Emotions should never be allowed to take control. Instead, emotions must be controlled. The king admitted quietly that he tried to control his anger, but failed again and again. The teacher replied with wisdom. He said that control is not something that appears overnight. Patience is a habit, just like anger. And habits are built through practice. Just as strength requires daily exercise, emotional control requires daily effort. These words stayed with the king. In the days that followed, something began to change. When situations arose that would normally trigger his anger, he paused. Even if only for a few seconds, he stopped himself from reacting immediately. Slowly, he noticed something remarkable. When his mind was calm, his thoughts became clearer. And when his thoughts were clear, his decisions improved. Over time, the king became noticeably calmer. Court discussions became more balanced. Punishments became fairer. People began to respect him not just for his power, but for his wisdom. His kingdom grew more peaceful, and so did his personal life. One day, the king returned to his childhood teacher and thanked him. He said that those words had changed his life. He finally understood that true strength was not found in anger, but in control. The teacher smiled kindly and said that this struggle was not unique to kings. Most people act under emotional pressure. Anger, happiness, sadness, these emotions come and go. They are natural. But when people allow emotions to drive their actions, they lose control of their lives. He advised the king to share this lesson with others, to teach people the value of calmness and patience so they too could live better lives. And this is where the story becomes about us. Because this lesson is not only for a king, it is for anyone living in today's fast, pressure-filled world. A world where stress, anxiety, criticism, and comparison constantly push emotional buttons. We react quickly. We speak without thinking. We make decisions we later regret. Emotions themselves are not the enemy. They are natural and unavoidable. The problem begins when we react without awareness. Acting under emotional influence often leads to regret because emotions are temporary, but the consequences of our actions can be permanent. The first step toward emotional control is awareness. We must identify our emotional triggers. Triggers are the things that instantly change our emotional state. They can be words, situations, memories, or specific people. For some, criticism is a trigger. For others, being ignored, disrespected, or reminded of past pain creates emotional reactions. To recognize these triggers, self-reflection is essential. When emotions rise, instead of reacting, we should observe. Notice what we are feeling. Notice how the body reacts. Notice the thoughts that appear. Simple techniques like slow breathing or short pauses can calm the nervous system. Mindfulness helps us stay present instead of being carried away by emotion. Taking a short break, stepping away from the situation, or speaking to someone we trust can prevent emotional damage. Most importantly, we must remember that emotions pass. Anger fades, sadness softens, joy settles. But actions taken during emotional storms often leave lasting scars. When we learn to respond instead of react, we reclaim control over our lives. We become calmer, wiser, and stronger. Not because we suppress emotions, but because we understand them. True power is not shouting louder. True strength is not reacting faster. True mastery is staying calm when everything inside you wants to explode. And when you master that, you don't just change moments, you change your entire life.